corner to McLean Stadium. Grayson Grundhoefer, Sic'Em365.com, 365 Sports, with us about what has been the week of recruiting. Grayson, when you look at the junior college, the transfer portal, National Signing Day, your thoughts on how Baylor did with Dave Aranda and his staff?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot discussed about the 2024 class specifically. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that it is, this crown jewel of a class. I mean, it's ranked, outside the top 60. And frankly, for the most part, Baylor classes shouldn't be ranked, that low. And I think most people would agree with that. But I also think, you look a little deeper into the situation that has occurred for Baylor over the last year, and it kind of paints a different picture, right? So I know everyone's seen all these graphics. Baylor ranked 16th according to On3 or whatever in the conference. And if you do it by average, Baylor is much closer to the middle of the conference by average recruit rank. But Baylor took a much smaller class this year. And the reason for that is that you saw the team this year. You saw a lot of young guys that really performed pretty well, or at least showed flashes of maybe what they could be in the future, even though obviously they weren't winning games. And you go, okay, so they got these young guys. They got this young core that they feel good about. And then in order to get better for next year, in order to take that step forward, they have to add guys who are more proven and older and can come in with experience and past production and things like that. And so because of that, you're seeing this kind of shift in philosophy where Baylor's only going to take, maybe 13, 14, 15, 2024 guys, and then focusing a lot of their attention on the transfer portal, which I think is definitely going to reap rewards for Baylor next year, while also, again, developing the younger guys that they already have on the roster. So I think there's been a lot of discussion about that, and I think there's a lot of nuance to it, even though, I know the class rank isn't where people would want. Now, as far as what Baylor's done so far, I mean, you look at Dequan Finn, a quarterback, from Toledo, who Baylor needed to come in. They lost Blake Shapen to Mississippi State. They were looking for a quarterback who fit what Jake Spavital wanted to bring in as the offensive coordinator. And Finn comes in and brings really a lot of the things that you want to see, whether it's, mobility, escapability, the rushing ability, the deep ball down the sideline, along with production. The guy's been extremely productive the last 3 years, and he's just a winner. So you put all that together, and you got to feel good about that position going forward for the Bears. And obviously Omar Egbedian out of Montana State really coming in to reinforce the offensive line. And he really gives them a stable presence and a guy who's going to be just a road grader. I mean, the guy can move people, and Baylor didn't move many people last year. And, this was a guy who was ranked, I believe, a 4-star the morning before he committed to Baylor. And then by the afternoon, he had been dropped to a 3-star. So, take that for however you want to take that. But he's a very good prospect and right around that borderline 4-star territory for a transfer. And then obviously Cameron Jenkins from UNLV, who played a lot as a true freshman there. He's the twin brother of Caden Jenkins, and Cameron's going to come in and really add even more young depth to the roster. So I think at this point, Baylor's done a nice job. There's obviously still holes on the roster, but guys, there's a lot of time left. And Baylor's going to move into January with a focus on looking at different prospects that they haven't gotten on campus. And then, of course, they're going to be able to see new prospects as guys continue to enter the transfer portal every day.
So, Grayson, what's the plan of attack with the portal now? I mean, there's some feeling of they haven't been active enough. As you said, though, there's still time, but there's also a lot of guys off the board. What are you expecting? I mean, in terms of the impact needed and the positions needed, and just how do they approach this coming year and trying to redo this roster?
Right. So I think it's pretty clear based on the offers that have gone out and based on just kind of the focus of the staff on what positions they're clearly looking at. And I think Jack and star and wide receiver are 3 positions that, haven't been addressed yet. They're absolutely going to be addressed with at least one transfer portal addition at each of those positions. Depending on the quality of, best player available types, I could see multiple, especially at the wide receiver spot. But yeah, those 3 positions for sure. Obviously the offensive line, they're going to take another one, maybe even 2 more, to try to rebuild that group. Specifically they're going to want a guy who's got production already on film and tape that can come in and, you kind of feel good about, right? Going into spring football, you feel good that you have another position fixed. And so they're definitely going to do that. I think it'll probably be 2 more. I think it should be 2 more, but at least 1 more. Outside of that, though, I've kind of been, the more that I've looked at this and the more that I looked at it last year, Baylor did not take a safety last year, and I'm not including Star in this because Star's more of a nickel, but I'm talking about boundary and field safety, the positions that were played by Devin Lemire and Devin Bobby last year. Those 2 positions really, I felt like, struggled at times last year. They had moments here and there, but there was not enough depth at the position, and the tackling was not good enough last year either. And so, Devin Lemire gets hurt early in the season, and you're relying on either a true freshman, DJ Coleman, or Alfonso Allen, who's now in the transfer portal, to come in and really play a significant role. And that's really a tough ask, I think, for that group. So I would be really shocked if they didn't go out and add a safety, a deep safety to come in and at least add depth to the 2 deep. You'd like it to be a starter, but, a guy that's in the 2 deep to at least allow this group to rotate more and at least have more experience and more talent on the field more often. I just think that's a position that I'm not seeing them really focus on right now, that I do feel like is one that I think could be needed for this roster to really round into form.
Well, there's still coaches that need to be hired too. And now that we're past signing day, is that now the focus as they hit the holidays? What you expected, tight end or obviously running backs coach? What's going to happen with those staff opportunities?
Well, they already got Keenan Hall in there to do the running back side of stuff. So they're good there. It's really just tight ends, I think, is the only coaching spot that's left open. And, you're got to try to figure that out. Obviously, Sean Bell was going to take over that role, and now he's going to Houston. So I think that's going to be an interesting, hiring position, because you look at kind of what does the staff need, and I think you immediately turn towards recruiting, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But I also look at it as, man, you got a really talented tight end room. And for a lot of the criticisms that a lot of people have said about Jeff Grimes, the one thing, he absolutely did well was recruit tight ends. I mean, that position looked really good, infinitely better than at any time I've seen the Baylor tight end room in my time watching Baylor. They've taken a huge step forward. There's a lot of good young pieces there. So you would like a coach that could come in and develop that group as well as being a good recruiter in general. So I think that's a part of it for sure. But I also think, during this stretch, they're still going to send out offers. They're still going to be able to contact recruits, call, text messages, everything like that. You just can't have recruits on campus. So the transfer portal is still going to be extremely busy. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult to get commits right now just because, transfers usually want to visit before making that decision. There is a little bit of an open period, January 3rd through the 7th. That's going to be very important. You'll have visitors during that stretch, and then the portal, the dead period ends on January 12th. So that's where things become even more open.
As you learn more about him, what are your thoughts on Dequan Finn? I mean, we had a pretty good interview with him just yesterday, and how this all sort of unfolded from your standpoint with him in the fold now. What does that kind of mean, and what are your thoughts on him as a prospect and a player?
Yeah, I think that, again, it's one of those things where you're getting a guy who's a proven commodity. He was the Mac's most valuable player this past year. And, I mean, he's just done a lot of really good things during his time at Toledo, and he's been ultra productive for 3 straight years. And I think that's really important for Baylor to kind of know the kind of production that you're going to get and really be able to count on that. And I think they're going to get that with Dequan Finn. And he's going to come in. I think he's pretty easily going to throw for, something like 2,500 yards and at least going to run for about 600 yards and have right around, 25 to 30 touchdowns. That's what he's done the last 3 years. So it'd be pretty shocking to not see him perform at that level. But I think the bigger thing with him, and probably the thing that matters the most in all of this, is he has won football games. And, Toledo had a stretch in there from 2018 to 2020 where, they were just kind of a 500 team, to be honest. And this was after coming off a really nice run there in 2017. But during that 3-4 year stretch, they were just, 6-7 win team. And when he became the starting quarterback, they won 7 games in 2021. then 9 games in 2022, including a MAC championship. And then this past year, they won 11 games. So continuing to get better and better as he became more ingrained in the offense and the culture there at Toledo, and really took that program to a very high level this past season. And that's really cool to see. Obviously, averaging over 31 points per game during his time as the starting quarterback is really encouraging as well. And I think just in general, Baylor, I don't think could have asked for a better prospect to land at the quarterback position than Dequan Finn. I mean, he fits everything that they need. And realistically, I mean, to get a guy that is a most valuable player in a league that is, fairly good in the MAC, I mean, that's a really big deal. And I'm not sure that enough people realize, just how good he was at Toledo. And it's a huge pickup for Dave Aranda and Jake Spavital.
And I know that as the season ended, and of course the last several weeks was a nightmare year for Baylor and the fans, and how many darts were thrown at Aranda, Grimes, Mateos, etc., and Palic. But when we've talked to players, and including Dequan Finn yesterday, they raved about Dave Aranda. They raved about who he is. Now, he's a nice guy. Everyone knows he's a nice guy, but there were more than he's just a nice guy comments from Finn and others about Dave Aranda, the football coach. Have you noticed that too?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, guys, that's not shocking at all. And it's something that I tried to reiterate for months when people were trying to, a lot of people really wanted Dave Aranda to be fired. And, a lot of it was saying, the culture, the team, and all these different things. And that's, great to say in theory, but I think the proof is what's happening right now. And the fact of the matter is, you look at the guys that have transferred away from Baylor, there's only 2 of them that I think Baylor would have wanted. And really, there's only one that I think is a significant loss, and that's Drake Dabney, because you replaced Blake Shapen with Dequan Finn. So you feel like you at least got a push. I think Finn's going to end up being better than Shapen, but still, like, you look at that and go, okay, he's been able to retain pretty much all of this roster. And if you look back a month ago or 2 months ago on Twitter or whatever, forum that you look at, so many people were saying this roster is going to see a mass exodus. Everyone's going to leave and all these different kind of horror story takes. And in reality, that has not happened. And that's because these players really do have a lot of confidence in Dave Aranda, a lot of confidence in the entire staff and Baylor as a program. And I think that speaks volumes about the culture that Dave Aranda has instilled there. Now, culture is great and retaining players is great. You still have to go win games. I think we all realize that. But I do think that you're exactly right. The players respect Dave Aranda, and they really do think that he is the guy that can lead them, to a bright future.
Grayson, Alex Foster didn't sign on signing day. That wasn't a surprise. A big-time defensive lineman prospect, not necessarily by ranking, but certainly by the fact that Texas is hot and heavy on his heels, and I don't think we're going to doubt their ability to scout defensive linemen at this point. While that wasn't unexpected, have you gleaned anything from, what to kind of think here over the next few weeks as he waits until National Signing Day number 2? Anything changed in terms of the Alex Foster story?
Not a ton has changed there. I still, stand by that Baylor is the leader right now. As things progress, you never know what may happen. You never know what could change leading into February, but I do think that Baylor is still in a really good spot to land him, and they really do need to land him. That's a priority for Baylor, and I think it's one of those things where I think Alex Foster is going to probably have to look at this and go, okay, do I want to go in and be the backup option at Texas, or do I want to be the guy at Baylor? And I think that's going to be a big decision that he's going to have to make. But I think in general, Baylor's done an amazing job recruiting him. They found him really early on, and he's a guy who, in my eyes, is probably the best recruit in this class. I mean, he's a very, very special prospect, great size, fits exactly what they want on the defensive line. And I think he would be a huge loss. And that's why Baylor has really, really made him a priority, a huge priority going into February. And even, this early signing day, they really have tried everything they can to keep him and to get him to Baylor. So that's going to be an interesting story to follow, and definitely one that the Baylor staff is working on heavily, and something that's going to be very interesting to watch. But yeah, that's a huge piece of the puzzle as Baylor moves forward into the second signing day.
I know we don't normally ask you about basketball because we're so busy with football news, but any thoughts on where Scott Drew and the men find themselves, particularly after that loss the other night against Duke?
Yeah, I think you look at the Michigan State game and you can kind of write that off as, Michigan State kind of had a get right spot and they played really well. They played their best game of the year and Baylor did not. And so that's what happens when, that result is kind of what happens in those situations. But I felt like in the Duke game, you saw some problems there just continuing to reoccur for Baylor. And simply put, they're not good enough defensively right now. They're not good enough in my eyes to make a Sweet 16 push with the defense that they're playing at the moment. And while they have a good offense, you do see at times they still have an inability to get into the lane. And if they're not able to get into the lane, it really stops everything they do. I think they're a little bit too careless with the basketball right now. There's just a lot of things that weren't right these last two games. The good news is they have a little bit of a stretch here to get ready for conference play and make some adjustments. But ultimately, I think the biggest thing for me watching these past two games is defensively just how much further they need to go if they actually want to be a serious title contender. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Defensively, just they need to take a huge step forward. And I do want to say, on the flip side, I know we don't talk about women's basketball too much, but they are off to a great start. And Nikki Collin really has that group playing really, really good basketball on the women's side. And so, got to mention them. They're doing a great job heading into the holidays undefeated. And they have a real chance to get back on the top of the Big 12 standings.
Hey, Grayson, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thanks for your time on many things from the week that has been busy, portal, obviously National Signing Day, and much more. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Grayson Grundhoefer.